A modern engine requires fuel to go, oil to lubricate, and coolant to keep it cool. I bet you filled up your gas tank in the last 2 weeks, changed your oil in the last year or 6,000 kilometers, but unless you've had a coolant leak or your bike is overheating, you probably haven't changed your coolant, possibly ever. But just like oil has a lifespan, so does coolant. Coolant needs to be changed every 2 years or 38,000 kilometers because the additives that they put in it, like anti-corrosive agents or acid buffers, get used up or worn out with time. You can also have scale or rust build up in the cooling passages, reducing the flow and therefore effectiveness of the cooling system. And since a cooler engine will make more power, this is definitely worthwhile. So now you know why you should change your coolant. I'm going to show you how to drain it, how to flush or clean your system, and how to refill it. But if you have an old air-cooled bike, you're probably laughing right now. First, here's what we need for the job. A bike that is cooled down so you don't burn yourself, any tools you will need to remove bodywork, the drain bolt and the coolant reservoir, a container of sorts to drain the old coolant into, fresh coolant, a funnel, and possibly some sort of cooling system cleaner and distilled water, depending on how thorough you want to be. Step 1 is to drain the coolant that's currently in your bike. If you don't know when last it was changed, it's a good idea to do it. The drain bolt is usually located on the bottom of the water pump, since gravity works on coolant too. The correct bolt will most likely be the only bolt that has a copper washer behind it to seal. But if it's not there, consult your owner's manual. Fortunately, I didn't have to remove any fairings to get to this point, only one shroud obscuring my radiator cap, but you might have to remove a lot more. Now position your catch can under the drain bolt and remove the bolt. Since the system is pressurized, the coolant should just trickle out a bit. This gives you a chance to reposition the catch can before loosening the radiator cap, which will release the pressure and coolant will come shooting out faster than you're expecting. Some coolants that come in bikes from the factory can contain ethylene glycol, which is poisonous. So keep it away from pets and children because these pretty colors do look tasty. With all the old, dirty looking coolant out of the system, it's now time to remove the reservoir as well so we can get 100% of the coolant out. You might need to remove a bolt or two and a hose to get it off. Since the system is now empty, you should take the opportunity to check hoses for cracks because now would be the easiest time to replace them. They should be somewhat malleable, not brittle. Make sure clamps are tight and you can even straighten out bent fins on your radiator with a pick or small screwdriver. So that is draining out of the way. Now, if your bike is on the older side of things or has higher mileage, it could benefit from using some sort of cooling system cleaner to get rid of any built-up rust or scale within the system. I have seen some people use homemade concoctions like 1 part white vinegar to 1 part distilled water. But personally, I prefer off-the-shelf methods just because they're easier. I'm going to use this motorbike radiator cleaner from Liqui Moly, but I also found this Shield radiator cleaner that does the same job for a bit cheaper. Just make sure to follow the instructions on the bottle. Don't forget to put your drain bolt back in first, and then I poured half the bottle of Liqui Moly into my radiator and filled the system up the rest of the way with distilled water. You then put the radiator cap back on and let the bike run for around 10 minutes so it gets nice and hot and circulates your cooling passages before waiting for it to cool down and draining the system once again. It's also a good idea to leave the drain bolt out and pour some distilled water through the system just to rinse out any remaining radiator cleaner. My bike isn't very old or high mileage, so I didn't get any wonderful rust colors coming out of it, just more blue coolant that was left behind. But let me know how effective it is on your bike. And finally, all we have to do is put some fresh coolant back in the bike and we're good to ride. Some people really overcomplicate picking a coolant. You'll get advocates for engine ice who swear it runs 700 degrees cooler than anything else, and people who won't put anything other than Motorex in their KTM. But the truth is, they're all very similar. Personally, I always just try to use something with a respected brand name, like Motorex, Bel-Ray, Castrol, or today, Motul. But most importantly, just use whatever your owner's manual suggests and follow what the back of the bottle says. Most coolants come pre-diluted like this Motul, so you can just pour them straight into your bike without worrying, while others need to be diluted with distilled water to a specific ratio like 50-50. Again, don't forget the drain plug, preferably with a new copper washer since technically they're single use. Then fill your radiator with fresh coolant all the way to the filler neck. Wiggle the bike a bit to get out any air bubbles, and then start the bike with the radiator cap still off so the coolant can circulate and air can be released. Blipping the throttle a few times can also help bleed the system better. After that, kill the engine, top the radiator up if need be, and fill your reservoir to the max line. And that's it. Keep an eye on your coolant level after your first ride just to be sure, but now you have fresh coolant that should be cooling your bike more effectively, and it should be flowing through your engine better than ever. Let me know when last you changed your coolant, and I'll see you on the next ride.